Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled What If Notre Dame Betrayed College Football in 2004? Notre Dame just betrayed Miami, not on the field, not in a game, with a contract. And by the time Miami realized what happened, college football was already splitting in half. You may be thinking to yourself that realignment didn't get crazy until the 2010s. But what if I told you there was a moment in 2004 where everything could have broken early, where LSU chose power over tradition, where Miami believed the sport still revolved around them, where Washington chased relevance and lost its identity, and where one quiet clause changed everything. This is alternate history, and this is the realignment disaster that almost destroyed college football. And that sets the table for when the sport still made sense. In 2004, college football still felt regional. The Big Ten was the Midwest. The Pac-10 was the West Coast. The SEC was the South. And Saturdays, they belonged to rivalries you could feel in your bones. But behind the scenes, something was changing. TV money was starting to matter more than geography, and one program understood that before everyone else. Notre Dame didn't want a conference, they wanted leverage. Decades of independence had taught them one thing. If you can't control the system, you position yourself above it. So when Miami began exploring its future outside the Big East, Notre Dame made a quiet move. Not official, but a proposition. Not a conference, a partnership, a national league. More money, more control. And Miami listened, because Miami didn't think they needed a conference. They thought they were larger than one. And that sets the table for LSU stepping into the room. While Miami looked forward, SEC looked inward. Something didn't feel right. Revenue gaps were forming. TV deals weren't equal, and power wasn't centralized. And at LSU, that mattered, because LSU didn't want to be good for a moment. They wanted to stay dominant. Enter Nick Saban. He wasn't thinking about winning games. He was thinking about control. Control of recruiting, control of the future. So LSU begins pushing an idea behind closed doors, not expansion, but a breakaway, a Southern Super League built around programs that didn't want to share anymore, including LSU, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. You may be thinking to yourself that the SEC would never fracture, that tradition would hold it together, but tradition doesn't negotiate TV contracts, money does. And once that idea enters the room, it doesn't leave. But here's where this stops being just a power play. Because in Baton Rouge, not everyone agreed. There are boosters who believed Saturday night home games weren't something you packaged and sold. There are fans who felt something sacred was being traded. But LSU stepped into the room anyways, and once they did, they could not step out. And that sets the table to Miami building the wrong future. While LSU built power, Miami built belief. Miami football thought they were creating the future of the sport. A national league, coast to coast, brand over geography. They saw themselves as a centerpiece, and for a moment it worked. Recruits listened, media bought in, the idea felt modern, but something was missing. No true rivalries, no regional identity, no sense of place. Older fans felt it immediately. This didn't feel like college football, it felt like a product. And Miami didn't realize they weren't controlling it, they were being used by it. And that sets the table for the leak. Then it leaks, a clause, buried deep in Notre Dame's agreement. A clause that allows them to schedule games with both leagues while committing to neither. Miami sees it first, and in that moment, everything changes because Miami realizes something devastating. They weren't building a league, they were building leverage for Notre Dame. You may be thinking to yourself that this doesn't sound like betrayal, that it sounds like strategy. And from Notre Dame's perspective, it was. They had spent decades protecting independence, and they weren't about to lose it now. They didn't think they were breaking the sport. They thought they were surviving it. But survival for one program comes at a cost for everyone else. And that sets the table for Washington being left behind. Out west, Washington made a different bet. They believed tradition would hold. They believed the Pac-10 still mattered. They believed the old system would survive. So they waited, and while they waited, the money moved, the visibility moved, and recruits followed. Washington didn't collapse overnight, they faded. And for fans who remembered what Washington used to be, that was much worse. And that sets the table for the 2006 title drama. By 2006, the sport no longer agreed on what matters. LSU wins the Southern Super League. Miami wins the National League. Notre Dame claims it belongs above both. The BCS has to choose and it picks LSU and Notre Dame. Miami is angry. The West Coast disengages, and the title game happens anyways. LSU wins, but it doesn't feel like a victory because nobody agrees that it counts. And that sets the table for what was lost in this alternate universe. Because the part that matters wasn't who won or who got paid, it was what was lost. Rivalries that made Saturdays feel different, regions that gave the sport identity, trust between programs. You may be thinking to yourself that college football eventually changed anyway, and you're right. But in this alternate timeline, it didn't happen slowly, it broke all at once. And the programs that survived, they weren't the same. LSU became powerful. Miami lost its edge. Washington lost its place. And Notre Dame, they got exactly what they wanted, a seat above the system, even if the system didn't survive. Now, this is a college football alternate history. If you enjoyed this, hit like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next timeline.